see.
Looks like it's just you and me, Harry.
Attendees joining. Great.
We kick off in a minute, or what should we?
Yeah, I think just give it 1 more minute and then we'll kick things off. Okay, Juliet, I think whenever you're ready, feel free to take it away.
Okay, fantastic. Well, look, lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for joining us on this voyage of discovery we are just about to embark on. So as some of you may know, this is the first session of 3. And the reason why we wanted to structure it as the first session of 3 is that we wanted to start off by sort of laying the groundwork in terms of the science of learning. So really this session is really focused on how the brain works. And then the second session is on AI, and then the third is basically how we're applying AI. But what I wanted to do with these sessions is move away from the idea that we have a complete understanding of how AI will transform L&D. And I wanted us to go back to, you know, the kind of reason why most of us started off our careers in learning and development, that passion and excitement for how people learn and how we can really kind of create a learning environment where people are super passionate and excited about their career development. So this is really what this session is about. And I'm going to kick off by saying everything I say about instructional design is not in this presentation. This presentation is really heavily loaded with a lot of theory and me just talking at you. So I'm going to apologize in advance. There is going to be the possibility for Q&A at the end. But I think it's just because I'm so excited and passionate about, you know, how the brain works and how we can transform learning and development through AI, that I just wanted to get all of this information over to you. So I'm going to apologize in advance that it is not as interactive as I know it should be in terms of best practice. So let's just look at what we're going to be talking about today. So just very quickly, the first session, as I say, is really about what you guys, I'm sure, already know. This is about how people learn, and it's really about going back to basics in terms of, you know, how we can optimize the brain to maximize curiosity and, you know, excitement about growth and development. The second session is not how we've applied AI, but is just kind of clarifying some of the things about data lakes, the NLP layer, and how we can bring AI technology together in order to create really transformative, not, you know, oh, can we make content, you know, easier to produce? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, can we fundamentally revolutionize and personalize learning for individuals? So that is going to be quite a creative session where I'm going to be getting you guys to think about what is the art of the possible so that we can, you know, revolutionize and really kind of maximize the enjoyment for learning for our learners. And then the third session is how we have taken this idea of really understanding how the brain works, what we know about AI, and how we've basically pulled that together in a product that we are now, you know, in beta testing with and would love to get your feedback and thoughts on. You know, it's not out there being used in anger, but it is in beta testing. And so we just want to talk you through how we've pulled that all together and, you know, get your thoughts and ideas, basically. So, excuse me, not a great way to start. So, in terms of what the presentation I'm going to go through, there's quite a lot of theory there. So, you know, apologies in advance. I'm going to give a brief overview in terms of who we are. I'm sure most of you already know who I am, but anyway, who we are. Then we're going to talk about teaching approaches, because there is a fundamentally kind of open door now with AI in terms of how we can transform how teaching and coaching and mentoring can be changed in light of AI. So I want us to reflect on the teaching approaches we've had and how that will change with regards to the future of AI. Then I want to talk about cognitive load. So I know that you L&D professionals out there will know what I'm talking about cognitive load, but I just wanted to go in a little bit more with regards to how the traditional approaches that we've had to learning just don't work for a lot of people, and discuss the reasons why. Then I want to talk about neuroplasticity, brain neuroplasticity, and how we can, you know, we're born curious. How can we contain and motivate that curiosity to a higher level in workplace learning? So we're going to talk a bit about neuroplasticity. Then we're going to talk about how we enhance learning. So how can we get the brain to learn better and be curious about more? Then we're going to talk about curiosity, and then finally we're going to talk about how we might be able to embrace AI, and then finally the 4D process. So as I say, heavy duty, and apologies in advance, a lot of me monologuing, but hopefully it will allow us to sort of get on the same page in terms of what I have been obsessing about for the last 18 months. So who am I? I am Juliet Denny. I have been lucky enough to be leading growth engineering. I'm no longer leading growth engineering, the wonderful Gary is, but growth engineering and my fabulous team there. And we've really been focusing on how we can create learning environments that are highly gamified and very social. So the real focus with growth engineering is a SaaS platform, very, very focused on engagement, trying to get learners to fall in love with their learning. But then 18 months ago, we had AI sort of came into my zone, and I was like, you know what, I need to jump off the good ship growth engineering. It's got the most fabulous management team. It doesn't need me any longer. I want to dive deep down into the world of AI. And so that is what I am currently doing. I am exploring, I am breaking things. I am trying to literally revolutionize the way we are now delivering learning. So that's what we're doing with Zavmo AI in Iridescent at the moment. So my real passion is the science of learning. Okay, and I think that will come across in this presentation. Why I'm interested in AI is only to maximize the passion, the curiosity, and the interest that I believe everyone should have in their own learning and development. And so that's really what the angle that I come from. Although the next presentation does have a lot of AI and it's a bit more technical, really it's all rooted in this idea of how do we unleash a passion to basically be the best we possibly can through our learning and development. So let's just start off with something that we're all very sort of familiar with. AI is changing learning and development. Okay, it is changing learning and development. In schools, students are using AI, and we're already beginning to see how AI can help, and support the learning process in schools. Okay, so there's already some, strong indicators that AI is going to be a big part of the way we learn in the future. But I am not convinced that we are anyway close to where we should be getting with AI. And this is the voyage that we are going to go on in the next sort of three seminars. So first of all, let's just talk or think about the students, okay? So we can think about the students as in ourselves. We can think about when we have been students. We can think about when we've experienced being a student in a classroom setting, and we can think about being a student in an online setting. And one of the things that, I am slightly obsessed about is this idea that current education, the vast majority of education, is a one-to-many relationship. Okay, so you've got one teacher, you've got one piece of e-learning, and they are pushing it out to the students. Now, I don't know how many of you in the audience have, kids that are dyslexic or kids that have got ADHD. I am very dyslexic. I am very, very dyslexic. I had a terrible time at school and ended up, getting into an awful lot of trouble and, didn't get any O-levels or A-levels as a result. Now, that was nothing to do with my intelligence. I do pride myself on the fact that I am actually quite a smart cookie. And I did manage to salvage traditional education when I was older and ended up getting my master's from Harvard. But it's not that I wasn't stupid. It's not that I'm stupid. It's just that this one-to-many process of delivering education suits some people, but it doesn't suit us all. So if we just think about, back to any time when we were in the classroom, we can probably remember people coming, into the class that had a lot going on at home, whatever that means. They maybe didn't eat, so their blood sugar wasn't optimal. They were dyslexic, so they literally couldn't see what was on the screen. They had ADHD, so basically they just wanted to get up and move around the whole time. They didn't really, their brain, because maybe they were dyslexic, their short-term memory wasn't very good. And so basically what happened is somebody would tell them something, but it wouldn't go in. So it was almost like having to repeat things again and again and again. So when you look at a body of students, whether that's in an educational setting or even in a vocational setting. Okay, so we can think about when we're delivering e-learning or videos or whatever it might be to our people in, you know, a workplace setting. And again, the same, it's the same thing. We're not tailoring the learning in any shape, way, or form to the needs of that individual. The other thing that I think is really interesting when we look at one-to-many versus one-to-one, so individual type relationship with learning, is that it's not tailored for what you understand. Okay, so let's say you're looking at something like, you know, compliance training. If you have been in the industry for a long time, you're being asked to do compliance training, you may very well get the same piece of compliance training that somebody who has only been in the industry for, you know, a year or 2 years, right? And so this idea that the learning is also not necessarily suited for the level that you are is also of a concern, because if we start thinking about the way the brain works, we need to have attention. So first of all, we need to actually have a sense of, yes, I am interested in this subject. So for me, you've got this kind of beautiful kind of duality almost between an old style pedagogy, which is kind of one-to-many. Okay, so very much teacher-led, very much one size fits all. Okay, and then you've got the aspirational learning process, which I believe we can get to with you know, AI, which is very much about a personal relationship with that content delivered in a way that works identically for your role, your situation, how your brain is feeling that way, and inspired by the things that you care about. So that could be, you know, where you want to get to in your career in terms of, you know, your ambitions, or it could be taking a topic that you don't find particularly interesting, like, let's say, compliance training or whatever it is, and interweaving it with your hobbies and things you do care about in order to make you more engaged in the process. Okay, so fundamentally what I am putting out there is now is the time for us to stop thinking about a one-to-many learning process and grab the opportunity that AI can deliver to personalize that experience. So one of the things that really concerns me more than anything is in a one-to-many content delivery style, be that teachers or be that, you know, e-learning, is this idea that there is no immediate feedback from the student. So I know that you guys on the call are all as excited about Bloom's taxonomy. I mean, is there a better model? I'm just in love with that model, and I have been for, you know, the longest time. But what Bloom's taxonomy teaches us is that people generally, yes, we have to have the information being pushed to us. Okay, so we have to have that knowledge piece. Okay, I'm not denying that the knowledge piece doesn't need to happen. But where all humans get excited and where we get, you know, our curiosity is piqued up is at the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So let's analyze, let's put it into practice, let's work out how we can build on that information to make it relevant for us and our world. Okay, and so this idea of cognitive load to me is fascinating, because people will switch off. They will get bored. They will not understand how the information is part of a bigger picture or is scaffolded in a way that means the knowledge is relevant, because we are not able to get into the process of what is happening in that individual's cognitive load. So what is happening at the process of receiving that knowledge and then moving that knowledge on into the application of the knowledge. So at the core, the idea is if we are going to fundamentally make learning more interesting for our learners, we have to have feedback in terms of that cognitive load, real-time feedback, what is happening to that learner in terms of their ability to understand the information, their ability to you know, scaffold that information in a way that basically makes sense. And most importantly, think through the impact of that information so that they can actually apply it in their roles, because it's only through applying it moves from our short-term memory to our long-term memory, right? And that is where we get the return on investment from our training spend. So this idea of cognitive load for me is fascinating, and we need to keep coming back to it. The other thing that I find really interesting about cognitive load is we all know, and as I said at the beginning of this presentation, I'm so sorry, it's 45 minutes of me monologuing about this, is the fact that we know people lose attention in a very short period of time. So why do we persist? I know we have micro learning now, I get it, you know, but TikTok's even shorter, but also we're not interacting with each other. So even though we've got micro learning, there's still no feedback. There's still no real-time feedback in order to break the cognitive load and make sure the information is scaffolded and, you know, is applicable, relevant, exciting to the learner. So this idea of cognitive load, I just keep coming back to, how are we going to solve this? And then, of course, we've got this wonderful model that we all know about, which is the forgetting curve. And one of the things that I think is so interesting about whether it's compliance training or whether it's academic studies, you know, we've all know of students that have just, you know, rocked their, you know, GCSEs or their A levels. But if you ask them, can you remember anything about the exam? Or can you remember, I don't know, the syllabus? By now they will have forgotten it, because all they're doing is cramming, you know, all they're doing is cramming. So they're not applying necessarily the knowledge, but also the forgetting curve kicks in anyway. So we all know this, you know, what did you watch on Netflix last night? What was the last TikTok video you watched? You just simply can't remember it, because what's happening is you're taking in the knowledge, but you're not doing anything with it. You're not. And so we're constantly in this fight for the forgetting curve. And even if we're talking about micro learning, we are still not giving students the time and the space to learn how to move that information from the bottom rung of Bloom's taxonomy into the higher levels, so they're actually utilizing information that's going to make an impact to our business. And that's what we should be and need to focus on. The other thing that I think is really fascinating is this idea of neuroplasticity. So, you know, we are born curious. We are one of the only animals that basically, you know, part of what makes us distinctly human is that we never cease to be curious. And as soon as we are, we effectively grow old. And, you know, you can tell that from the people that you know who, you know, might be old, but they act like kids. They're always into something, you know, I'm into bikes, I'm into, you know, history, I'm into whatever it is. This idea that you can stop a human being curious is biologically impossible, right? Humans have to stay curious in order to adapt to new situations and, you know, evolve. But why is it that the learning in schools, in universities, and in you know, in a lot of e-learning just kills curiosity? People just don't like it. So that is something that is fundamentally baffles me, that we've got a situation where you've got a sponge that wants to learn, but yet because we have this one-to-many situation, it's not personalized for the learner, that kind of curiosity is killed. And we can be curious about anything. It's just the way we need to contextualize that information in order to make it relevant to us. So, you know, the key thing about neuroplasticity is the more we can engage people with new ideas, new thoughts, inspire them to do things with this new information, the happier they're going to feel. And that is really, you know, why L&D should be seen as the center of happiness in an organization, because we're inspiring people to learn new skills so that they can put those new skills into practice, and they will, you know, feel happier and more content because they're adding value to the process. So this idea of neuroplasticity, I also find absolutely fascinating, because the more curious and the better we can get people to want to learn, the happier they're going to be, and the stronger their ability to learn new things and memorize the things they've been taught will become. So neuroplasticity is a, you know, it's a muscle. You know, it's the difference between the growth mindset and the non-growth mindset. And, you know, what we need to do is we need to curate learning environments which by their DNA have a growth mindset, you know, within them. And so this idea of neuroplasticity is so, you know, humans are insane in terms of our ferocious appetite for new knowledge. But why as organizations and why as institutions are we so bad at cultivating, better neuroplasticity? Why isn't it something we measure? Why isn't it something we think about? Because we should. The better we can learn, the happier that we're going to be, the more adaptable we will be to things that are coming down the line. So in order to improve neuroplasticity, according to neuroscience, it's actually a lot more simple than you think. Yeah, it really just is 4 things we need to do better. Okay, I know they're big challenges, and if it was easy, we would have done them before. But let's just take them one by one. Okay, so the first thing is we need attention. Okay, so again, going back to our wonderful students. Okay, we send out a piece of learning. Okay, how much attention do you think they have in that piece of content? Okay, they might not have the context. It might not be, so they might not know why they're being sent this piece of information. They might not know what they're meant to do with this information once they've actually, watched it. They might not know why it's important for their role. Like, so what impact should this have on my role, and why should I care about it? And they might not, even be asked to do anything with it. So there's no responsibility to actually pay attention. So there's a multiple load of reasons why we're not meeting criteria number 1. So we are currently, in a lot of our learning interventions, not able to get the learner to have a high degree of attention in the moment that they open the new e-learning or they enter that classroom. Okay, that's the first thing. So if we can't get attention, okay, attention is about, right, I'm excited, my brain is open, I am ready to receive new information. We're then not going to get on to the next bit, which is engagement. So I'm listening, or I am moving through this piece of e-learning, but I'm not thinking about it, right? I don't know how to scaffold it. I don't know where this fits into the other pieces of learning. I don't know where this fits into my other job. I don't know. I've got some questions, but I can't answer the questions. Why is it phrased like that? Because the last time, I did a piece of learning, it was phrased like this. Well, that's all well and good, but I did this last year. You can see what's happening in the mind of the learner in terms of the engagement. It's just, falling off. And there's no ultimate feedback. So there's no really super quick feedback. So as the student is going through the learning experience, what's happening is they're not able to get immediate feedback to why me? Why am I doing it now? Why, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no feedback. And then the other issue is there's no consolidation. So what does this mean in light of my role? What does this mean in light of my future career? What does this mean in light of, so how is that information being consolidated? So these 4 areas are all areas that we need to work on independently, but together, in order to maximize our neuroplasticity. So if we as individuals can improve our attention on something, we can maintain our engagement as we try and learn through something, we can get real-time feedback, and we can consolidate that as part of something bigger, we will naturally get smarter. So if you apply that 4-step process to something you love, so often when I see my son, who's really dyslexic, done terribly at school, but is bright as a cookie, when I see him working on motorbikes, this is exactly it. He loves working on his motorbikes. He'll go outside, he'll spend all hours, he's high level of attention. He's totally and utterly engaged. He's never been taught how to, take out a motorbike and put it back together. But he's done that through feedback because it doesn't work. So he just keeps going back and back and back. And then from that, he now wants to build his own car. So do you see how that can work in any setting? And this is what we really need to focus on with regards to how we're curating the learning experience. So if we can do all of these things, ultimately, we can improve intention, we can improve concentration, we can improve the depth of learning, and we can get to, this idea of mindfulness. So really thinking about the learning and how it impacts our role. So you can see a similar sort of structure in Bloom's taxonomy, where what we need to see is we need to see the impact of the learning, not see the delivery of the learning. It's a similar sort of structure. The other thing is empowerment comes from, the the conscious awareness. I feel very, very happy and confident that I know those skills. So it's our job to ensure that we are taking the learner through all of those different stages. Do you know why you're doing the learning? Have I got your attention? Can I maintain your attention? Because this is important stuff. It's relevant to you and your role. Can I basically ensure that the learning that I'm doing is scaffolding in a way that it can link to all the other things that I'm doing, my role, my ambitions, etc. And then can I use that information to build confidence in applying and getting involved in projects that are basically going to move me and my career and my organization forward. So this is the kind of context, this is the kind of context that I'm talking about. So in terms of how we actually look at neuroplasticity, the focus here is on really strengthening executive control. So just going back to this slide, this is all about the things we need to do in order to strengthen our executive control. How do we get our brains to be better at learning? Okay. And there are some really, really clear things. We need little and often. We need to build and repeat. So we need to allow the brain to scaffold and make sense and understand why it's relevant, understand the context. We need to continually check that knowledge to let the learner build confidence. We need to reinforce the information through practical case studies and practical examples. We need to make sure the information is delivered in a hierarchical fashion so that there is comfort and confidence before we move on to the next level. We have to show progression. In the gamification setting, it's a very, very powerful way of allowing the learner to understand all the good things that they've done. But this idea of progression is really important in confidence building, because it's only with confidence our brains have the attention and are open to learning, right? So you can see this kind of beautiful, virtuous, circle. The other thing we need to do is we need to allow the learner to highlight the connections. So this idea of relevance is directly leads to this sense of autonomy. So how am I going to put this learning into action? And then finally, we have to ensure that every piece of learning going out, we are promoting the application of that knowledge. Because if we're not doing that, why are we getting them to do it, right? We need to get them to apply as well as know, and that will get that shift. That will get that shift that we want in learning. So this is where you take the way the brain works, and obviously a lot of the structure of the way AI works is based on the neural pathways of the way the brain works. But when people talk about AI now, I get quite depressed sometimes, because I'm like, you don't understand how AI can serve the learner, how AI can be that force behind the learner in changing a one-to-many to a one-to-one relationship with that content. And the reason is that when we look at AI, we're very focused on, summary or give me this information. But the prompt engineering level, the NLP level, can be used in a so much broader, better way than, summarize this information, structure this information, produce me, a paper or a piece of e-learning in a nanosecond, right? I want more from AI, and that's what this series is about, and that is what the iridescent technologies experiment is all about. So just really briefly, because the next one is much more focused on AI, here are the types of things that you can do with the natural language processing layer. You can basically clean and normalize and sort of process tasks. So you can take huge loads of information and you can basically tag it and flag it in a way that can be useful for a load of different applications. And this is very, very exciting when it comes to things like standards and academic qualifications and, benchmarking, perceived structures and formats of education, and basically delivering that into organizations and into individuals. The other thing that we can do is we can basically divide the text into individual words or individual tokens so that we can really begin to understand what the learner is thinking and feeling as they go through the learning, okay? And we can adapt how we speak to the learner and how we communicate with the learner in real time, depending on how that learner is communicating back to us, okay? So you might be able to reach the same learning objectives and learning outcomes, but the road in which the learner is navigating and going through the learning objectives and meeting the learning outcomes will change according to that specific learner. You can also, identify and classify groups of information. Okay, so you can begin to understand why, how, where knowledge is either not seeping through, not being applied, or is seemingly not relevant to the organization. Okay, so there are some really interesting gap analysis that you can do when you start to get this information back from learners in terms of how they are interacting with new information. You can also do semantic, analysis. So you can really begin to get a sense of confidence. So confidence is critical to curiosity. Without curiosity, without confidence, you can't be curious, because your confidence and ability to kind of move forward and learn new things is predicated on, am I going to be successful at it? So this sensitivity analysis that we can do on, words, sentences, and, the process in how people are interacting with the AI is critical for things like pacing. So how quickly do we move information, through and onto a learner's plate? How do we, bring in their hobbies, things that they might be confident about, in order to help them move over a particularly hard bit of information that otherwise their confidence wouldn't allow them to move through. And the other thing that we can do is we can create stories, right? We can create stories and scenarios based on that individual, right? So when you're getting somebody to move through their learning outcomes, you don't want a generic learning outcome. You don't want to say, okay, well, do you know this learning outcome, and test them on it. What you want is you want them to say, this new piece of information now. I'm going to give you a role play based on your role, based on where you want your role to go, that will allow you to role play that scenario with a fictitious boss or a fictitious mentee or whatever it is, so that you can show how you're applying these skills. And we can do that based on what we know about the learner's journey so far. So hopefully that kind of gives you, a tiny indication of why, utilizing AI and NLP within a learning context is so much more than what you've seen, currently in trade shows and stuff like that. We're not touching the surface of what this technology can do in terms of personalizing learners and, creating, unleashing superheroes within all of us in terms of what this technology, can do. And the stuff that I really love is, we're all familiar with SCORM. We're to a certain extent familiar with, XAPI. XAPI is wonderful because what XAPI allows us to do is basically tag and flag anything. Okay, so tagging and flagging your data lake, you can do all sorts of things. Okay, you can find out how much active participation people are doing when they're moving through the learning. You can proactively ask for questions based on the person's role, based on the person's ambitions, based on the person's personal challenges. You can basically at any point ask to pause the delivery of the learning objectives, and you can say, what do you think? Has what I've said made sense in terms of the AI? This is Zavmo speaking to the learner. You can also, if you the Zavmo or the conversational tutor is talking a lot and you're not getting anything back from the learner, that also speaks volumes in terms of what's happening to the attention and what's happening to curiosity. So, or engagement. So what we can do is we can stop and ask for a pause. So particularly if you're dyslexic or you've got ADHD or some of these things, what we can do is by looking at every single word and the context in how you are responding to the learning process as you move through it, you can, continually iterate the learning experience for the learner. And so we can begin to really get to this idea of how engaged are people about this new initiative. We're rolling out a new vision and values. Do people actually care about it? Do they know what it's for? Like, do they actually remember all, our 17 mission statements? How are they actually applying those mission statements, to their jobs? So we can begin to get a sense of, the high, medium, and low engagement rates for campaigns that we're running. And after all, if we're not getting engagement, we're not going to get that change of behavior, or at least that acceptance that we need to put the knowledge into application in our roles. So really, what we want to do, the role of AI, as I see it, is not. So we've been through the idea that we're going to teach people. So it's going to be, I'm going to sit here and you guys are going to listen, and it's a one size fits all kind of learning experience. We're now, in my view, need to move to a whole different way of delivering out learning to our people, which maximizes the cognitive load and maximizes our neuroplasticity. So what we are interested in is trying to create learning environments that have an improved attention. We don't need longer with these people. We need better quality learning experiences so that we can get focused attention, we can get better active engagement, we can get real-time error correction based on the individual, and we can basically give them a mapped pathway to, future aspirations or areas of information that they are curious about. Okay, so we want to make the training that they're getting more delightful and more interesting and more relevant to the individual as well as the organization. So the starting point for Zavmo AI, as I said, my interest is in the science of learning. It's not necessarily in technology for technology's sake. So looking and reflecting on what I've been banging on about in this presentation with regards to the way the brain works, the first thing that I wanted to do is come up with a really concise methodology which allowed everybody to understand why we are structuring the AI conversational interface in the way we are, okay? And that can be done in what we're calling the 4Ds, okay? The 4Ds start off with discovery. Who are you? What is your role? What do you want out of your future? How does that map to organizational goals? Basically, what are your hobbies and interests? What is your education level? How do you want the learning to be so that it suits your life? So this is all in discovery. Then, so what that does is that basically gets attention. So, if you're in a bar, somebody comes up and it's all about you, you've got high attention. You like it when you're talking about yourself and exploring, what you think your ideal life design would be. So you're getting attention. Then what we do is we go on to discussion. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Are you sure? Or, what time have you got available? I noticed that you're, dyslexic, is this the kind of way that you want your learning to be structured? So here, what you're doing is you are getting agreement. We all know that, having done learning in a kind of corporate or an educational setting, learning is something that's done to you. You don't actually really get a choice. You might be able to choose, yes, I'm doing geography, but you don't get to choose, what type of geography. And it's an important part of engagement. If I haven't agreed to what's going on, I'm going to be less engaged. Then we go on to the delivery, and the delivery should be customized to your role, your ambitions, and your neurodiversity needs. And it should be wrapped in things that you are naturally engaged about. So that's how we deliver the learning, the learning objectives. And then we get onto the really interesting stuff where the brain is actually humming, and that's on demonstration. So that's when we're creating case studies and role plays where you're actually putting the information into, into practice. So this is basically, what we're trying to do with Zavmo AI, fundamentally change the way we create the instructional process for learners. So yeah, this is just 4 slides that just go to say, it is all about you. That's the first thing. Learning needs to be contextualized around you. That doesn't mean to say that we can't forge forward on meeting organizational objectives. It just needs to be communicated and taught in a way that resonates with the individual. Okay, so we're not saying you can learn anything you want. What we're saying is the learning needs to arrive at that person in a way that resonates with them, and that's what discovery is about. Then we go on to discussion. This is a partnership. Do you actually want to learn, and are you willing to basically, if we can create a learning environment the way that you want it, can you basically commit to that learning adventure? Then we go on to delivery, and delivery is obviously personal to the role. It's set up to basically be delivered in a conversational manner. So it's just, conversation going back between Zavmo AI and the individual, but it's very much focused on the person's role and, the realities of what that individual is spending their life doing. And then finally, demonstration. So this is where we're hoping to improve return on investment. So if we're spending the time training people up, we want to know, let's say it's digital skills, future digital skills. Right, now you've learned what ML is. In your role, you are a level 7, you're a level 2 role, or you're a level 7 role. You are now going to be responsible for finding ML projects that will basically bring you closer to a deeper understanding of how ML projects are impacting your organization. If you're a level 7, you're going to be, tasked with, looking around and identifying areas, standard operating procedures in your organization that you can apply ML projects to in order to X, Y, Z, right? So we're looking to create an environment where people can really kind of demonstrate those skills. So in terms of the demonstration, what we really want to move away from is the stuff that people hate doing, the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy, so the testing and the quizzes, and we want to get to that stage of people actually applying that information through case studies, role plays, individual scenarios that really resonate with that person. Again, so we can maximize that concentration, we can ensure that the information is being scaffolded in the right way so that it can actually be applied and used so that the organization can get a return on that intellectual capital. And the other thing is that we've got, and I know I'm over time here, is because AI works in real time, these data lakes are just huge environments of data. We're able to see exactly what is going on in real time to our learners. So we can pivot, we can change, and we can respond through the prompt engineering level in a way that really does ensure that we're getting the outcomes that we want to see in terms of the key organizational initiatives that the leadership think are going to drive the organization's top and bottom line growth. And this feedback and analytics engine is something that we have never seen in current learning management platforms or any rigid SaaS typical SaaS platform. So that's just sort of the first one of the next 3. It's been an absolute delight to have you on the call. We're definitely looking for beta testers. So if there's any curious people out there that would like to join us on trying to change the future of learning, we would be absolutely delighted. And any feedback, we're learning, right? I just want to be really clear. We have not solved this problem. We need people like you, people that are passionate and excited about how we can unleash everybody's inner superhero. So we would encourage anyone to join, and very much looking forward to any feedback that you might have. So that is it from me. I just want to say thank you very much. Let's open it up to, we've now got 12 minutes of questions, but obviously I am on LinkedIn, and hopefully you've all got my contact details, so please feel free to reach out. I mean, I love talking to people about AI in the world of learning. So should we just open it up and see if there's any questions that I can answer, sorry.
We've got a question from Frank Juliet. So he asks, how do you create feedback in a video course? Any
Well,
thoughts on that?
I think it's a bit difficult because you're not necessarily using I mean, obviously you can do so, you know, typically on a learning management platform or on a piece of learning that is, you know, either SCORM or video, you can obviously do ranking and rating and you can put comments, but that doesn't give you real-time feedback. The only way to do real-time feedback is to do real-time learning, and that's, you know, conversation, you know, either, you know, verbal conversation or typing conversation, in order to basically ensure that you're not losing. And this is obviously the beauty of AI. So I think videos have their place, but I think as we move forward, what we'll find is we'll find media forms part of the learning conversation. So you could maybe deliver out, you know, 1-minute video, you know, to discuss a particular model, but then you'd want to get straight in. Does the model make sense to you? You know, how would you use that model in your role? You know, yeah, have you seen this kind of model before? Have you ever seen a model like this, you know, break down? These are the kind of things that you would want to, you know, include in the conversation. So yeah, I think, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but obviously if it's a one-to-many media, then you're never going to get real-time feedback. It needs to be personalized in a way that, you know, you can do that through conversational AI.
Frank says, outstanding framework and answer. So that sounds positive. Brian's asked if a recording will be available of this session afterwards. Yeah, I can confirm we'll be sending that out via email. We'll also include a link to the beta program sign-up form as well for those who are interested in getting involved. I can't see any other questions. Is there anything else anyone would like to ask before we wrap up?
So I hope to see some of you on the next call. Again, apologies for the monologuing. I know it's like the worst type of instructional way of going about things. If anyone's got any ideas, you know, how we can, I don't know, maybe we can chunk up the sessions, or but anyway, look forward to your feedback, and obviously we will pivot and you know, try and yeah, make it a bit more interactive on the next one and moving forward. But thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it, and yeah, look forward to seeing you in the next session.
Thank you, everyone.